It was just another evening in the city, until a tiny trembling bear cub appeared in the alley. Alone, lost, and scared, it had no idea that the smallest human nearby would change everything, including the way the whole neighborhood saw courage and compassion. Rain had just tapered off when Mia, a 10-year-old with a curiosity that often led her into small misadventures, wandered down the narrow alley behind her apartment. The scent of wet concrete and leftover trash mixed with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from the bakery on the corner. She had been delivering a forgotten scarf to Mrs. Dalrymple across the street when something unusual caught her eye. A small, trembling shape crouched behind a pile of cardboard boxes. At first, Mia thought it was a stray dog or maybe a raccoon, but the soft, round ears and trembling paws revealed it was something far rarer. A bear cub, its fur matted from rain and grime, eyes wide with both fear and confusion. She froze, instinct telling her to retreat, but another part of her, the part that loved animals more than anything else, urged her forward. Hey there, she whispered softly, keeping her voice calm and low. The cub flinched, backing closer into the shadow of the cardboard boxes. Its small growls weren't aggressive but were clearly cries of panic. Mia crouched down to the ground, lowering herself to its level, her heart pounding in her chest. She remembered the lessons from her nature books. Do not corner a wild animal, make yourself non-threatening, and always move slowly. The cub's eyes glistened with moisture, and for a moment, it seemed as if time had slowed. The city's usual sounds, distant traffic, a barking dog, the hum of a neon sign, faded away. It was just Mia and the cub, two small beings, both cautious, both aware that one wrong move could change everything. Mia looked around the alley for anything that could help. There was a small cardboard box, discarded and flattened, a few bits of breadcrumbs left over from the bakery, and a faded blanket tossed aside from a nearby dumpster. Slowly, she picked up the blanket, spreading it gently toward the cub while keeping her distance. It's okay, you're safe, she murmured. The cub hesitated, sniffing the air. Hunger and fatigue seemed to outweigh its fear. Tentatively, it stepped toward the blanket, its small paws making soft, wet impressions on the pavement. Just as Mia reached out her hand, a loud clatter echoed from the other end of the alley, a knocked-over trash can rattling against the wall. The cub yelped, scrambling backward, and Mia froze. From the shadows, a neighbor appeared, Mr. Jenkins, the elderly man who always complained about the pigeons but secretly fed the stray cats. Is that a bear? He stammered, eyes wide, stepping closer. Yes, but it's just a cub, Mia replied quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. It's lost. I think it needs help. Mr. Jenkins looked skeptical, but then noticed the wet fur, the trembling paws, and the tiny whimper. A cub? In the city? He muttered. How on earth did it get here? Mia didn't know. The thought of its mother being somewhere nearby flashed in her mind, but she also knew that the cub couldn't survive alone in this urban maze. She made a quick decision. We need to get it somewhere safe, at least out of the alley. Can you help me? Together, they improvised a small carrier using the flattened cardboard box and some towels from Mr. Jenkins' apartment. Mia coaxed the cub gently, letting it climb onto the makeshift platform. Its tiny body shivered, but it seemed to sense her calmness. As they stepped out of the alley, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, creating a shimmering path that seemed to guide them. Neighbors peered from windows and doorways, curiosity piqued. Some whispered warnings, others offered soft encouragements. Mia realized that this small cub, this tiny being, had instantly captured the attention of the community. But the challenge had only begun. Where could they take it? The local animal shelter was closed for the evening, and she knew that calling authorities immediately could cause panic or worse. The cub might be taken away without proper care. Mia and Mr. Jenkins walked briskly, avoiding main streets, toward a small abandoned storage shed at the end of the alley, a temporary solution at least until they could figure out the next steps. Inside the shed, the cub cautiously explored its new surroundings. The smell of dust and old wood didn't seem to bother it. The safety of walls surrounding it was enough to calm its trembling. Mia offered bits of bread she had saved from the bakery, and to her relief, the cub began to nibble cautiously. She smiled, a surge of hope filling her chest. As the night deepened, Mia stayed close, making sure the cub felt secure. Mr. Jenkins, surprisingly patient, offered her advice he remembered from his years living near the city outskirts. Wild animals are clever, and they can be scared by the smallest things. You have to let them come to you on their own terms. Hours passed in a quiet rhythm. The rain had stopped, but the alley outside remained slick and reflective. Mia kept thinking of the cub's tiny heart, so fragile yet so brave, mirroring the courage she felt inside herself. She wondered if anyone else would notice what was happening in this forgotten corner of the city. Just as she was about to doze off against the shed wall, a faint scratching sound came from the small window above. Both Mia and Mr. Jenkins froze. The cub perked up, ears twitching, staring at the noise. Mia's heart skipped a beat. Had someone seen them? Or, even worse, had the cub's mother finally found them? The sound grew louder, deliberate, almost purposeful. The shadows outside stretched longer under the dim streetlight. And then, from the corner of the window, a dark silhouette emerged, large, deliberate, and unmistakably wild. The cub froze, its tiny body rigid. Mia instinctively stepped in front of it, shielding it, while Mr. Jenkins whispered, "Stay calm, whatever it is, don't make a sudden move." The night held its breath. Who or what is outside the shed, and will Mia be able to protect the cub? How would you react if you saw a wild animal outside your window in the city? Mia's pulse raced as she stared at the shadow outside the shed window. The cub pressed close to her, tiny body trembling against her legs. Mr. Jenkins had quietly moved to the side, his eyes fixed on the window, hands raised slightly as if to show he posed no threat. The silhouette remained still for a moment, then moved slightly, and Mia realized it was watching them deliberately, not attacking. The cub's small growl vibrated against Mia's leg, more from fear than aggression. "Shoo, it's okay," she whispered, lowering herself to the cub's level again. Her hand hovered over the cardboard box that now served as a temporary shelter, ready to shield it if needed. From outside came another sound, a soft rustle like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Then a heavier step. The cub's eyes widened, glancing back at Mia and Mr. Jenkins as if asking silently what was happening. Mia's mind raced. Could it be the cub's mother? She remembered reading that mother bears rarely abandon their young, but in a city setting, a mother tracking her cub could become dangerous for anyone nearby. She also thought about the possibility of someone else, an animal control officer or a passerby, seeing the cub and panicking. The city was full of dangers, far beyond the alley walls. "Stay calm, Mia," Mr. Jenkins muttered softly, leaning closer. "Animals can sense fear. It'll either leave if it's not a threat, or it might just be curious." The silhouette moved closer to the shed wall, and Mia noticed something remarkable. It wasn't aggressive. It was observing, its posture cautious yet attentive. Mia's chest tightened with a mix of relief and anxiety. She had never been this close to a wild animal before, especially not one in such an unnatural environment. She whispered to the cub, "See? It's just watching. Nothing else." The cub relaxed slightly, pressing its wet nose to her hand. But Mia couldn't ignore the tension that lingered. Something told her the night was far from over. Minutes passed in a fragile, silent truce. Then came a soft knocking at the shed's door. Mia stiffened. "Who?" she murmured. A familiar voice followed, faint but unmistakable. "Mia, are you in there?" It was her neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, a kind woman who often helped at the local community center. Mia motioned for the cub to stay still and whispered, "Shoo, it's okay. Just don't startle it." Mrs. Alvarez stepped into the dim light of the alley, holding a small bag of food. "I saw a movement from my window," she said quietly. "Is it a bear?" "Yes," Mia replied softly. "But it's just a cub. It's lost. I think it needs help, not fear." Mrs. Alvarez nodded, eyes scanning the alley carefully. "We need a plan," she said. "You can't keep it here forever. And the authorities, well, they might not understand." Mia looked down at the cub, who was now exploring the edges of the cardboard box. Its small movements reminded her how fragile yet resilient it was. She realized that the situation required more than immediate protection. It required careful thought, teamwork, and courage. Together, the three of them began brainstorming options. They could try to temporarily shelter the cub in the abandoned shed until morning, contact a wildlife expert discreetly, or even organize a small group of trusted neighbors to watch over it. Every choice carried risk. One wrong move and the cub could be injured, scared, or captured improperly. As they talked, a subtle sound came from the alley entrance, soft, deliberate footsteps. The group froze. The cub's ears perked up, and it took a few cautious steps closer to Mia, seeking comfort. From the shadows emerged a tall figure, silhouetted against the streetlight. At first, Mia assumed it was another curious neighbor, but then she noticed the badge glinting faintly under the dim light. An animal control officer. Mia's heart sank. The officer's presence meant official intervention, and she knew the cub's fate could change dramatically. She quickly whispered to Mrs. Alvarez, "We need to stay calm. Don't let it see panic." The officer spoke, voice firm but not unkind. We've had reports of a bear cub spotted in this area. Can you tell me if it's in there? Mia swallowed hard. Yes, but it's just a cub. Please, it's scared. We're trying to keep it safe. The officer paused, considering her words. I understand, but you can't keep a wild animal here. It's dangerous for both the cub and people. Mia's mind raced. She had seen how small communities could come together, how quick thinking and empathy could guide action in tense situations. She decided to appeal to that shared sense of responsibility. Officer, we can keep it safe until morning, Mia said earnestly. We can make sure it doesn't hurt anyone and doesn't get hurt. If we release it too quickly, it could wander into traffic or get trapped. Please, just until we can get someone trained to handle it properly. The officer studied her, then glanced at the cub. Its small eyes, glistening with curiosity and fear, met the officer's gaze. A silent negotiation passed between human and animal, authority and innocence. Finally, the officer nodded slowly. All right, he said. But only under your supervision. Any sudden movements and I take over. Mia exhaled softly, relief washing over her. She felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on her small shoulders, but it was a different kind of weight, a purposeful, meaningful one. The cub sniffed the air cautiously, as if sensing that its safety had been momentarily assured. Mrs. Alvarez stepped closer, putting a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. We can do this, but we'll need to be careful. Every move matters. The three of them arranged the shed, placing soft blankets and bits of bread near the cub, creating a temporary safe zone. Mia kept herself low, speaking softly and moving deliberately. The cub, sensing the calmness around it, began to explore more confidently, sniffing the corners, occasionally looking back at Mia for reassurance. Hours passed, each tick of the clock accompanied by the distant hum of city life. Traffic, a barking dog, and the occasional shout from a passerby punctuated the otherwise tense silence. Mia kept her focus on the cub, watching its small behaviors, the way it tilted its head curiously, the subtle twitch of its ears, the careful way it stepped around the cardboard edges. Every movement reminded her that she was witnessing a living being navigating fear, just like she had navigated hers. Then, just as she was beginning to feel a sliver of calm, a sudden clattering noise echoed from the alley entrance. The cub froze instantly, hair on its small body standing on end. Mia's stomach tightened. This wasn't the officer. This was something else, something moving faster, heavier, and more deliberate. She glanced at Mrs. Alvarez and Mr. Jenkins. Get ready, stay calm but be ready to protect it, she whispered. From the shadows emerged another cub-sized shape, smaller, wet, and familiar. The first cub's eyes lit up instantly, recognizing its companion. Relief and tension mingled in the shed as Mia realized the cub hadn't been entirely alone. But something about the second cub's movements was hurried, almost frantic, and the first cub whined, stepping protectively in front of it. Mia's heart raced. Two cubs, one confined shed, and the city outside, everything could go wrong in a heartbeat. Yet she also understood that this was a chance to help not one but two lost creatures, and maybe teach her neighbors the true meaning of responsibility, courage, and community. The second cub has arrived. Will Mia and the neighbors be able to keep both safe until help comes? How would you act if two wild animals suddenly appeared in your urban environment? The sudden appearance of the second cub changed everything. Mia felt the weight of responsibility double, yet her determination only grew stronger. She gently stroked the first cub's damp fur, whispering soothing words. It's okay, we can handle this. Just trust me. The first cub relaxed slightly but stayed close, protective of its newly arrived sibling. Mrs. Alvarez, who had been observing quietly, spoke up. We can't do this alone. The shed is too small and managing two cubs is going to be tricky. Her tone wasn't scolding, it was a mixture of concern and resolve. She turned toward the alley and raised her voice softly. Anyone out there willing to help? From the surrounding windows and doorways, neighbors began to appear. At first, cautious and curious, they quickly understood the situation. There were whispers, questions, and then proposals. Someone fetch blankets, someone bring food, someone block the alley to keep cars and passers-by away. What began as a quiet, tense moment soon transformed into a coordinated community effort. A teenager from the building across the street, clutching his phone, spoke up. I can call the local wildlife rescue group. They might give instructions until morning. Another neighbor, Mrs. Patel, ran back inside her apartment and returned with a large plastic crate. This can be temporary housing if needed, she said, setting it carefully inside the shed. Mia marveled at how quickly people responded once the urgency became clear. For a moment she forgot her own fear. Her focus was entirely on the cubs, ensuring they felt safe amidst the flurry of human activity. The first cub sniffed at the edges of the new crate, while the second cub, smaller and clearly more timid, hovered behind Mia's legs, eyes wide and glistening. Mr. Jenkins, standing near the doorway, reminded everyone, gentle movements. Calm voices. They can sense our emotions, and if we panic, they panic. His words carried weight, and the group collectively slowed down, moving carefully. Mia approached the cubs with a small handful of bread, encouraging them to enter the crate. It's okay, safe here. The first cub hesitated, but curiosity and the promise of food overcame its caution. Slowly it stepped into the crate. The second cub followed, stepping gingerly behind. The relief that Mia felt was palpable, a mixture of pride and cautious optimism. As the community settled into this careful coordination, conversations began to flow. People shared experiences of wildlife in the city, recent sightings, and stories of other animals lost or displaced. The alley, once just a forgotten slice of urban space, had transformed into a hub of collective purpose, an impromptu sanctuary where fear was replaced by care. Hours passed in a rhythm that balanced vigilance with quiet observation. Mia stayed close, whispering to the cubs and checking the crate's stability. She noted the subtle differences between the two, the first cub bolder, more exploratory, the second cautious, almost anxious, relying on the presence of its sibling and Mia's steadying hand. Each movement, each sniff, each small interaction carried lessons in observation, patience, and empathy. As midnight approached, the distant wail of a siren reminded everyone that the city never truly sleeps. Yet within the alley, the sounds of human cooperation and quiet animal trust created a temporary world of calm. Mia realized that responsibility was not just about protecting the cubs. It was also about coordinating people, reading behaviors, and maintaining a balance between caution and action. Suddenly, a soft noise came from the far end of the alley, a low, cautious growl. Everyone froze. The cubs stiffened, their small bodies pressing closer together. Mia's heart skipped a beat. Could it be another wild animal wandering into the city? Or something more immediate, a threat from humans unaware of what was happening? Before anyone could move, a shadow appeared at the edge of the alley. It was a stray dog, its posture tense but not hostile. The cubs stiffened, instinctively protective. Mia's mind raced. Any sudden movement could provoke the dog, endangering the cubs. She whispered to the community, "Slow, everyone slow. Don't panic." Mr. Jenkins stepped forward, carefully extending a hand toward the dog while keeping his body low. "Easy, calm," he murmured. The dog, sizing up the humans and the cubs, hesitated. Its tail twitched, ears flicking. Then, in a surprising turn, it backed away, disappearing down a side street. The tension dissolved, leaving behind a shared sense of relief and accomplishment. Mia exhaled, realizing how much she had learned in just a few hours. Observation, calmness, courage, and the power of community. But even as she smiled, she knew this was only the first step in a long night. The cubs were safe for now, but the city was unpredictable. The alley, once silent and abandoned, was now a microcosm of interdependence. Humans watching over animals, neighbors coordinating efforts, and Mia learning how a single child could inspire collective action. Just as she settled into the rhythm of feeding and monitoring, her phone buzzed softly. It was a message from the local wildlife rescue group. "We received your report. Due to urban constraints, we cannot send a team tonight. Please keep the cubs safe. A ranger will arrive at dawn. Do not attempt to release them until then." Mia's eyes widened. A full night stretched ahead. She looked at the cubs, now huddled together in the crate, and whispered, "We can do this, we'll make it through together." Then, from the alley entrance, came another unexpected sound, the faint echo of footsteps not belonging to neighbors or the earlier officer. The cubs' ears twitched, their small bodies stiffening. Mia's pulse quickened. This time it wasn't curiosity or accident. Someone, or something, was approaching deliberately. She turned to the neighbors for reassurance, but even their faces reflected tension. Everyone had been coordinated, alert, and patient, but now a new unknown loomed. Mia realized that tonight would test every ounce of courage, responsibility, and calmness she had cultivated in just a few hours. The alley, once just a narrow urban passage, had become a stage where human empathy, animal instinct, and community responsibility intertwined. And now, the final challenge of the night was approaching. One that could determine whether the cubs would remain safe or face unforeseen danger. Who or what is approaching the alley now, and will Mia and the neighbors be able to protect both cubs until the ranger arrives at dawn? How would you respond if an unexpected stranger or threat appeared while caring for vulnerable animals? Mia's eyes darted toward the approaching figure. The alley seemed narrower now, the city lights reflecting off puddles, turning every shadow into a potential threat. The cubs pressed close together, their small bodies trembling, instinctively sensing the tension in the humans around them. "Stay calm," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible but firm. She crouched lower behind the crate, shielding the cubs as best she could. Mr. Jenkins placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of reassurance. Mrs. Alvarez, standing nearby, glanced at the approaching figure, trying to gauge their intent. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, and now came with a faint shuffle of heavy fabric, a coat or backpack dragging across the wet pavement. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a tall man in a hooded jacket. He paused as if assessing the scene, and Mia noticed the glint of a flashlight in his hand. "Who's there?" she called softly, trying to keep her tone calm. Her hand hovered near the crate, ready to shield the cubs if necessary. The man raised a hand, not threatening, but his posture was rigid. "I'm with animal control," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I got reports about bear cubs in this area. I didn't expect a whole group of people here." Mia's heart raced. This was different from the earlier officer. This man seemed younger, unsure, maybe even overwhelmed by the urban situation. "Yes, we've been keeping them safe," she replied. "They're scared and lost. We're trying to prevent them from wandering into danger. A ranger is supposed to arrive at dawn." The man's eyes softened slightly as he observed the cubs huddled in the crate. "2 cubs?" he asked incredulously. "I've never seen anything like this in the city. How did they even get here?" Mia shrugged, realizing there was no easy answer. "I don't know. But they're just kids, too small to survive out here. We're asking for help, not interference." The man nodded slowly, lowering the flashlight. "I understand," he said. "I'll help you keep them calm until the ranger arrives. But we have to be careful. Any sudden noise or movement could panic them." With his agreement, the tension in the alley eased slightly, though Mia could still feel the pulse of anxiety running through her veins. The cubs, sensing the change in atmosphere, relaxed just a fraction, their tiny bodies still pressed close together. The group reorganized themselves. Mrs. Alvarez and Mr. Jenkins moved to block the alley entrance more effectively, while the new animal control helper joined Mia near the crate. They whispered instructions to each other, coordinating movements and feeding schedules, ensuring the cubs felt safe and secure. Mia noticed the cubs' subtle interactions, the way the first cub nudged the second, guiding it toward the food, or the tiny paw that reached for reassurance from Mia's hand. She realized that even in fear, the cubs were teaching her about trust, leadership, and courage. Hours slipped by. The city outside continued its restless hum, distant sirens and car horns punctuating the quiet coordination inside the alley. The cubs ate cautiously, exploring their temporary home while the humans monitored every movement. Mia's initial fear had transformed into a focused determination. She was no longer just a child trying to protect 2 animals. She was a caretaker, a guide, and a leader in her small community. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the alley entrance. Everyone froze. The cubs flinched, their small bodies pressing tightly against the crate. Mia's pulse quickened. The shadows at the alley's edge shifted rapidly, and for a moment, panic flared in her chest. "Stay calm," she shouted, though her voice quivered. "Everyone stay calm." From the shadows emerged not a human, but a stray dog, larger this time, barking aggressively. The cubs hissed softly, instinctive reactions that made Mia's stomach tighten. The animal control helper moved forward cautiously, arms outstretched to calm the dog. The neighbors stayed back, watching the scene unfold. Mia felt a rush of adrenaline. "We can't let it near them. Use something to block it," she cried. Mr. Jenkins grabbed a nearby wooden plank, positioning it as a barrier while Mrs. Alvarez carefully guided the cubs away from the crate's edge. The dog barked again, circling, but it hesitated when it encountered the human barrier. It growled low, then slowly retreated down the alley, disappearing into the shadows. Mia exhaled shakily, relief flooding her. The immediate danger was gone, but the night was far from over. The cubs relaxed, sniffing the air and cautiously returning to the crate. Mia knelt beside them, murmuring gentle reassurances. She felt a profound connection, a responsibility that extended beyond mere survival. This was about teaching the cubs that not all humans were threats, that trust could be earned and nurtured even in the harshest urban environment. As she watched them, the young animal control helper spoke quietly. "You've done something remarkable here," he said. Most people would have panicked. Most people wouldn't have thought to coordinate neighbors, manage risks, and care for them this way. Mia looked at him, her small hands resting on the crate. It's not just me. Everyone helped. We all made it happen. He nodded, understanding the deeper truth. This night was a testament not only to courage but to community, empathy, and responsibility. The Cubs had become the catalyst for a small neighborhood to unite, to protect, and to learn the meaning of compassionate action. But as the minutes ticked closer to dawn, another sound reached Mia's ears, faint, deliberate, and ominous. Unlike the stray dog or the earlier footsteps, this was softer, heavier, and approaching steadily from the far end of the alley. The Cubs stiffened again, ears twitching, noses sniffing the air. Mia's heart pounded. She instinctively stepped in front of the crate, positioning herself protectively. Whatever it is, we stay calm, she whispered to the neighbors and the animal control helper. The alley, quiet now except for distant city noise and the soft padding of approaching steps, seemed to hold its breath. The Cubs pressed together, ready for whatever was coming. Mia felt the weight of responsibility, not just for their immediate safety but for guiding everyone through this delicate moment. From the shadows, a new figure slowly emerged, silhouetted by the first light of dawn creeping over the rooftops. Mia's pulse quickened as she realized the final challenge of the night was about to unfold, one that would test every ounce of courage, patience, and unity they had cultivated. Who or what is approaching the alley as dawn breaks, and will Mia and the neighbors be able to keep both Cubs safe until the ranger arrives? How would you act if you were in their shoes, balancing caution and compassion? The first rays of dawn crept slowly over the rooftops, painting the wet alley in pale gold and pink. Mia squinted against the soft light, keeping herself close to the crate. The Cubs pressed together, their small bodies trembling not from fear now, but from exhaustion. The night had been long, filled with tense encounters, unexpected allies, and near misses. But now, as morning unfolded, hope mingled with responsibility in equal measure. From the far end of the alley came the sound of a vehicle, tires crunching against wet pavement. It was the ranger, just as the wildlife rescue group had promised. Mia's heart raced, not with panic this time but with anticipation. The Cubs, sensing the presence of another human, tensed slightly. Mia whispered, "It's okay, they're here to help." The ranger stepped out, tall and experienced, carrying a kit of equipment designed to handle wild animals safely. His eyes scanned the alley, taking in the Cubs, the makeshift crate, and the group of neighbors standing watch. "I got your messages," he said, voice calm and authoritative. "Looks like you've done a remarkable job keeping them safe." Mia felt a swell of pride. We just tried to keep them from getting hurt," she replied, her voice soft. "And the neighbors helped too." The ranger nodded, crouching slightly to assess the Cubs. 2 cubs in an urban alley, that's unusual. They've been separated from their mother, most likely due to encroaching urban development or an accident. You've given them a chance to survive the night, and that's significant. He carefully approached the crate, moving slowly and deliberately, just as Mia had been taught during the night. The Cubs sniffed the air, tentative but not panicked. Mia's hands hovered near the crate, ready to intervene if necessary, but the ranger's calm presence and gentle movements reassured her. The neighbors, who had stayed vigilant all night, now relaxed slightly. They had witnessed firsthand how empathy, patience, and collective action could change outcomes. This moment wasn't just about the Cubs, it was about the community learning the value of responsibility and courage in a tangible, immediate way. The ranger opened the crate carefully, speaking softly to the Cubs. "All right, little ones, time to move to a safer place." He extended his gloved hands, guiding the first cub into a transport carrier. The cub hesitated, sniffing the air, and then stepped forward, encouraged by the ranger's steady voice. The second cub followed, more hesitant but trusting the first. Mia exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and satisfaction flooding her. Once the cubs were secured, the ranger turned to the group. "You all did exceptionally well," he said. "Your vigilance and coordination prevented potential disaster. Now we'll take them to a controlled wildlife center where they can recover, and hopefully reunite with their mother if possible." Mia felt a lump in her throat. She had grown attached to the cubs over the long night. Their soft snuffles, tentative movements, and trust in her presence had left a mark she would not forget. She looked at Mrs. Alvarez, Mr. Jenkins, and the other neighbors, realizing that the experience had bound them together in a shared understanding of compassion and responsibility. "Can we visit them sometime?" Mia asked, unable to suppress her hope. The ranger smiled. "Once they're healthy and the environment is safe, There may be opportunities for supervised visits or community programs. For now, they need stability and care. As the cubs were gently lifted into the ranger's vehicle, a hush fell over the alley. The city sounds, distant traffic, morning walkers and occasional barking, felt muted compared to the intensity of the past hours. Mia watched the vehicle pull away, carrying the tiny creature she had protected, and felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear, coordinated with her neighbors, and ensured the safety of two vulnerable lives. Yet even as the immediate danger faded, the lessons of the night lingered. Responsibility wasn't just about action, it was about foresight, empathy, and courage in the face of uncertainty. The community had learned that even small gestures, watching, guiding, speaking softly, and staying calm, could prevent harm and foster trust. Mia glanced around at the neighbors. "Thank you all," she said quietly. "We couldn't have done it without everyone helping." Mr. Jenkins nodded, his usual gruff expression softened. "Sometimes it takes a little courage to teach a lot," he said. Mrs. Alvarez smiled, eyes warm. "And it starts with noticing what needs to be done." The young animal control helper who had stayed close throughout the night added, "You all should be proud. Most people would have panicked or called for help and left. You stayed. That's what made the difference." Mia took a deep breath, letting the morning air fill her lungs. The alley, once a place of tension and uncertainty, now felt like a testament to what humans and animals could teach each other. Even in a city filled with noise and unpredictability, empathy, courage, and collective action could create moments of connection and safety. As the ranger's vehicle disappeared around the corner, Mia noticed the cubs' small noses pressing against the window, looking back, curious and aware. She waved, whispering, "Be safe, you're not alone anymore." Just as she turned back to the group of neighbors, a faint rustle came from the far end of the alley. Mia froze, heart skipping a beat. It wasn't the cubs, the ranger had them now. It wasn't a dog, the streets were empty. She peered into the shadows, pulse quickening, realizing that even after the cubs' departure, the alley still held mysteries, challenges, and lessons to uncover. The city never truly slept, and neither did the responsibilities that came with caring for others, human or animal. Mia understood now that courage was not about the absence of fear, but about acting responsibly despite it. And in that understanding, she felt ready for whatever the city might throw her way next. The cubs are now safe, but the alley still holds unknown sounds and shadows. What challenges do you think urban wildlife might face even after being rescued? How can communities continue to protect and coexist with nature in a city? The alley, bathed in the soft morning glow, seemed almost peaceful now. Yet for Mia, it was more than a place. It was a living classroom, teaching her about responsibility, empathy, and the delicate balance between humans and nature in an urban environment. The cubs were gone, carried to safety by the ranger, but their presence lingered, a reminder that small actions could ripple outward in profound ways. Mia stood beside Mrs. Alvarez and Mr. Jenkins, surveying the alley. Empty boxes, blankets, and the faint traces of the night's activity told a story of collective effort and vigilance. "We did it," Mia murmured, her voice filled with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. "We really did it." Mrs. Alvarez smiled warmly. "Yes, but the lesson isn't just that we saved them. It's about noticing when someone, or something, needs help. The courage to act even when unsure, is what truly matters." Mr. Jenkins, who had been unusually quiet since dawn, nodded. "It's easy to turn away, to leave a problem for someone else. What you did, Mia, and what we all did together, proves that one act can inspire many more." Mia looked down at the crate area, imagining the cubs' small noses and curious eyes. Even though they were no longer physically present, their influence had left a tangible mark. She realized that responsibility extended beyond immediate action. It included foresight, understanding the urban environment, predicting potential dangers, and planning interventions that minimized risk. As neighbors began returning to their morning routines, Mia felt a subtle shift in the alley's atmosphere. What had once been a forgotten, shadowed space now carried a sense of communal pride and awareness. Even the stray animals that occasionally passed by seemed to sense the lingering human empathy. Mia's thoughts drifted to the young animal control helper who had stayed through the night. He had been hesitant at first, unsure of how to navigate the unexpected challenges. But by the end he had coordinated, observed, and learned alongside the neighbors. Mia realized that the night had been transformative not just for her, but for everyone involved. The conversation turned practical. "We need to think about long-term safety for wildlife in urban areas," Mrs. Alvarez suggested. "These cubs could have wandered into traffic or been harmed if we weren't here. What can we do to prevent that? Mia's mind raced. Maybe community awareness, posters, signs, educating people about what to do if they encounter animals. And perhaps keeping some safe spaces like this alley in mind for temporary protection. Mr. Jenkins added, local authorities need to be informed too. If we can create protocols for emergencies like this, fewer animals will face danger, and neighbors will feel empowered rather than helpless. They discussed logistics, sharing ideas about feeding stations, safe shelters, and a communication network to alert neighbors about wildlife sightings. The lesson was clear. Courage alone wasn't enough. Sustainable responsibility required planning, foresight, and collaboration. Just as Mia was feeling the satisfaction of these discussions, a sudden sound startled everyone, the faint scurrying of paws near a trash bin. She froze. The cubs were gone, but the city was still home to many creatures navigating human spaces. Mrs. Alvarez whispered, "Look, another one. Maybe a young raccoon or a stray kitten." The scuttling figure appeared, a small raccoon, cautious, sniffing the air, eyes reflecting the early sunlight. Mia's heart lifted slightly. She smiled, realizing that the alley was still alive with wildlife, and that her role, though less immediate now, was ongoing. Even after rescue, Mia murmured, the city still holds challenges. But maybe we've learned how to face them, together. The group spent the next hour documenting their observations. They marked safe spots, identified potential hazards, and discussed patterns in animal movement. Every neighbor contributed, and Mia noticed a sense of ownership forming within the community. They were no longer passive residents of the city, they were caretakers, observers, and protectors in their small way. The lessons extended beyond wildlife. Mia reflected on human behavior. Empathy, patience, and courage had united strangers into a cohesive unit. A simple act of noticing, stepping forward instead of turning away, had created a ripple effect of responsibility. She realized that moral courage wasn't grandiose. It was deliberate, consistent, and small acts repeated with care. As the sun climbed higher, the alley slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Passers-by glanced curiously at the remnants of blankets and crates, unaware of the dramatic events that had unfolded. But Mia knew the truth. This alley had been transformed, both physically and metaphorically. It had become a symbol of what humans and animals could achieve when trust, observation, and courage guided their actions. Mia bent down to collect a discarded piece of blanket. Her fingers brushed against the fabric, still faintly warm from the cub's presence. A smile tugged at her lips. She had learned more than she could have imagined, about responsibility, courage, and community. And the cubs, though far away now, had taught her that even the smallest lives could inspire the greatest lessons. Just as she was about to leave the alley, her phone buzzed with a notification from the wildlife rescue group. The message read, "The cubs are stable and being cared for. Thanks to your efforts, they have the best chance of reuniting with their mother." The community response was exemplary. Mia's chest tightened with pride and relief. The night's tension, the uncertainty, and the coordinated efforts had paid off. But the notification also reminded her that urban wildlife was an ongoing challenge, a delicate balance of care, observation, and intervention. Before she left, Mia glanced back down the alley, imagining the cubs exploring, safe and alive, and a sense of responsibility settled deep within her. She knew this wasn't the end. There would always be other creatures needing help, other moments demanding courage, and other lessons waiting to be learned. The cubs are safe, but urban wildlife continues to face challenges. How can communities maintain vigilance and compassion for animals living in city spaces? What small actions could make a big difference? By mid-morning, the alley had regained its quiet, yet the events of the night were still vividly alive in the minds of Mia and the neighbors. The city moved on outside, delivery trucks rumbled, pedestrians hurried by, and the distant hum of traffic filled the air. But within this small urban pocket, a sense of purpose lingered. Mia stood beside Mrs. Alvarez, who was busy writing notes on a pad, documenting the alley's layout, safe spots for small animals, and hazards to be aware of. Mr. Jenkins leaned on the wall, reviewing maps of nearby streets and potential escape routes for wildlife. The young animal control helper moved between them, occasionally jotting down observations and suggestions from the group. It was no longer a random emergency. It had evolved into a structured plan for urban wildlife care. Mia felt a swell of pride. "We can't just stop at saving cubs," she said, voice determined. "There are other animals in the city who might get lost or hurt. We should create a network." Mrs. Alvarez nodded. "Exactly. Awareness and preparedness can prevent tragedies. The city is unpredictable, but knowledge and communication make a huge difference. The group brainstormed ideas. Posting clear signs in alleyways warning about wildlife presence. Establishing a neighborhood alert system via a group chat or local social media page. Coordinating with local businesses like bakeries and corner stores to report sightings or temporary shelters. Educating children and adults about the signs of stress in urban animals and how to respond without causing harm. Each idea was discussed, debated, and refined. Mia noticed that every suggestion came from lived experience. Small observations from the night had grown into actionable strategies. She realized that courage was just the beginning. Planning, learning, and sharing knowledge were what turned bravery into lasting impact. As they finalized their preliminary plan, a soft rustle from a nearby dumpster drew their attention. Mia froze for a moment, her mind immediately alert. Out popped a tiny, scruffy kitten, blinking against the sunlight. It hesitated, sniffing the air. The neighbors exchanged smiles, relief evident on their faces. It was a reminder that the alley and the city at large was still home to creatures navigating human spaces. Their responsibility was ongoing. "See," Mia said softly. "Even now there are lives that need care. We can't stop." Mr. Jenkins grunted, a hint of warmth in his usually stern tone. "You've got the right idea, kid. It's about consistent effort, not just one night of heroics." The young animal control helper, observing the kitten, spoke thoughtfully. "We could start small. Map out safe alleys and green patches, coordinate volunteer schedules, and create a direct line to local rescue organizations. The key is consistency." Mia nodded. She felt a sense of ownership, not just for the alley but for the broader mission of coexistence. The cub's story had become a catalyst for this initiative, inspiring neighbors to take active roles and see their environment differently. The moral of the night was clear. Courage combined with planning and empathy creates lasting change. Just as they were discussing volunteer shifts, a soft whistle echoed from the far end of the alley. Everyone froze, instinctively scanning the surroundings. A delivery cyclist had entered, unaware of the previous night's events, and slowed cautiously upon seeing the group. The kitten darted behind a crate, and Mia instinctively moved to shield it. "Easy," she called softly. "Nothing to worry about." The cyclist nodded, giving a polite smile before continuing on his route. The neighbors exhaled, recognizing that vigilance didn't mean fear. It meant awareness, readiness, and measured responses. The morning continued with discussions about logistics and responsibilities. The group identified specific roles. Some would monitor wildlife in designated areas, others would liaise with local businesses, and a few would document sightings and incidents. Mia felt the weight of responsibility, yet it was empowering rather than overwhelming. She understood that real courage required follow-through, not just heroic moments. By late morning, a journalist from a local paper arrived, intrigued by the reports of cubs in the city and the community's intervention. Mia hesitated but decided to share the story, not for recognition but to inspire others. She described the cubs' arrival, the neighbors' coordination, and the lessons learned about responsibility, empathy, and urban coexistence. The journalist listened intently, taking notes and capturing photographs of the alley, now marked with small signs about wildlife awareness. "This could inspire other communities," the journalist said. "People need to see that collective action, even on a small scale, works." Mia felt a deep sense of satisfaction. What had begun as a single child's instinct to help had grown into a community movement, spreading awareness and teaching practical lessons about responsibility and courage. The cubs, though absent, had sparked a ripple effect that extended far beyond the alley. Yet, as the sun climbed higher, Mia sensed that the story wasn't over. The city was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges for both humans and animals. She glanced at the alley's entrance, remembering the shadowy encounters of the night. She knew that vigilance, empathy, and proactive care were ongoing responsibilities, a moral lesson that extended far beyond one incident. Suddenly, a faint rustle echoed near the edge of a nearby construction site. Mia stiffened. The kitten had run toward the sound, ears perked. She approached cautiously, neighbors following. Emerging from the shadows was a small raccoon, carrying a piece of discarded bread. Its eyes met Mia's for a moment, curious and cautious. "It's okay," Mia whispered, kneeling slowly. "No one will hurt you." The raccoon froze, sniffed the air, and then retreated back toward the safety of nearby green space. The kitten followed cautiously, learning from its older counterpart. Mia smiled, realizing that coexistence required patience, observation, and respect for instinct. The city could be harsh, but careful action, community coordination, and moral responsibility could create pockets of safety and understanding. As she stood, looking at her neighbors, Mia felt a profound sense of unity. The alley, once a forgotten passage, had become a symbol of what collective care could achieve. The cubs had taught her courage, the night had taught her responsibility, and now the ongoing vigilance of the community taught her that morality and action were inseparable. Even with a network in place, urban wildlife faces constant challenges. What strategies could your community implement to ensure ongoing coexistence with animals and cities? How would you balance human convenience with wildlife safety? By mid-afternoon, the alley had settled into a rhythm. Neighbors who had witnessed the cubs' rescue continued to discuss strategies, while Mia, energized by the morning's initiatives, began thinking about long-term education and awareness. The cubs were safe, but the city was full of small lives constantly navigating dangers. Mia understood that teaching others was the next step in ensuring sustainable protection. She gathered a small group of children from the neighborhood, some curious, some hesitant, and began sharing the story of the cubs. "These 2 cubs came through this alley last night," she began, showing photos the ranger had allowed her to take. "They were scared, alone, and could have been hurt. But we acted together, calmly and responsibly, and kept them safe." The children leaned in, eyes wide. Mia explained the basics of observing wildlife without disturbing them, emphasizing patience, respect, and safety. She demonstrated how to move quietly, how to avoid sudden gestures, and how to recognize signs of stress in animals. The children practiced, guided by Mia's calm, authoritative voice, while neighbors nodded in approval. "Why do we need to be careful?" one child asked, pointing toward the empty alley. "Because," Mia explained, "even small animals can feel fear just like we do. If we act without thinking, we might scare them or worse, put them in danger. Being responsible means thinking about others, even if they're not human." Mrs. Alvarez added, "And it's not just about animals. The lessons here apply to people too, noticing when someone needs help, acting with empathy, and coordinating with others to solve problems." Meanwhile, the young animal control helper assisted by showing the children simple tracking techniques, how to identify footprints, droppings, and other signs that indicated an animal's presence. He demonstrated how to leave safe spaces with water or shelter without encouraging dependency. Mia realized that empowerment through education was just as important as the rescue itself. She reflected on the night's events. Courage and quick thinking saved the cubs initially, but now knowledge and preparedness were what could prevent future crises. She felt a profound sense of purpose, recognizing that her role extended beyond immediate action. She was now a teacher, a mentor, and a model of responsibility. As the children dispersed with handouts and instructions, Mia turned to the neighbors. "We should create a small community guide," she suggested. "A map of safe areas, instructions for emergencies, and tips for observing wildlife without causing harm." Mr. Jenkins, who had been quietly observing, nodded. "Good idea. People respond to structure. It turns concern into action and prevents panic when situations arise unexpectedly." The group began drafting ideas on paper and whiteboards, discussing logistics for distributing the guide and organizing regular check-ins. They mapped escape routes for urban wildlife, designated safe alleys and green patches, and outlined ways to communicate sightings or emergencies efficiently. Every suggestion carried the weight of practical experience, a testament to the night's transformative events. Even as they worked, small reminders of the city's ongoing challenges appeared. A stray cat meandered through the alley, stopping to sniff the ground near a discarded food wrapper. Mia and the neighbors observed without intervening, respecting its independence while noting potential hazards nearby. "This is exactly why awareness matters," Mia said. "Even after the cubs are safe, the city continues to present risks. We have to stay vigilant." Mrs. Alvarez added thoughtfully, "And that vigilance is a moral responsibility. When we notice, act, and educate, we reduce suffering and create safer spaces. It's small, continuous efforts that matter most." The afternoon wore on, filled with discussion, planning, and practical exercises. Each neighbor contributed based on experience and intuition, while Mia led with a quiet authority born from the night's trials. She realized that true courage and morality weren't about grand gestures, but about sustained attention, empathy, and action. Just as they wrapped up their initial planning, a faint but distinct sound came from a nearby construction site, the scraping of metal on concrete. The group immediately froze, scanning the area. A small family of raccoons emerged cautiously, drawn to a leftover pile of debris. The children gasped, fascinated. Mia whispered, Observe, don't interfere. Watch how they navigate safely. The raccoons moved carefully, teaching the children a practical lesson in patience, observation, and respect. Mia smiled, realizing that every day presented opportunities for learning, for humans and for animals alike. She turned to the neighbors, a renewed determination in her eyes. This is just the beginning. We've proven we can act responsibly in emergencies. Now we can teach others, spread awareness, and make sure every animal has a chance to survive safely in this city. The young animal control helper nodded. Your leadership is inspiring, Mia. One incident sparked an entire community initiative. That's powerful. Mia glanced down the alley one last time, imagining the cubs somewhere safe, exploring cautiously, learning to trust again. Her heart swelled with pride, tempered by the awareness that the work was ongoing. The city was unpredictable, full of shadows and risks, but with vigilance, education, and moral responsibility, humans and animals could coexist in meaningful ways. The cubs are safe and the community is more aware, but the city continues to be full of hidden challenges for urban wildlife. How would you engage your community to maintain vigilance, educate others, and create sustainable safe spaces for animals? The alley, now bright with late afternoon sun, seemed almost serene. Yet, Mia knew that the city's rhythm was unpredictable. Even with community guidelines and educational efforts underway, new challenges could appear at any moment. She walked carefully along the alley with Mrs. Alvarez and the young animal control helper, checking the areas they had mapped for hazards, safe spots, and escape routes. As they approached a corner, a sudden clatter echoed from a nearby dumpster. Mia froze, her pulse quickening. The cubs were gone, but urban wildlife was unpredictable. Strays, raccoons, and smaller creatures moved through the city constantly. A family of raccoons emerged, darting between shadows and trash piles, foraging carefully. One of the raccoons slipped on a loose metal lid and tumbled partially into the alley, startling Mia and the neighbors. Quick, but don't rush it, Mia whispered, crouching near the cub's old crate area. She noticed the raccoons hesitated, scanning the humans around them. The young helper carefully placed a plank near the crate, providing a safe path for the raccoon to regain footing. Slowly, the creature navigated the makeshift ramp and disappeared into the shadows. Mrs. Alvarez exhaled. Even minor obstacles can be dangerous. Observation and quick thinking save lives. Mia nodded, realizing the city's unpredictability required not just courage but adaptability. The night with the cubs had been intense, but the lessons it taught her applied to every encounter. Responsibility meant planning for the unexpected and acting calmly under pressure. The discussion shifted to potential urban hazards: unsecured trash, loose construction materials, and unmonitored alleyways. The neighbors brainstormed ways to address each: barriers for open trash bins, volunteer shifts to monitor key locations, and educational posters for local businesses to prevent animal accidents. Each measure reinforced the idea that safety required continuous effort, not a single act. Suddenly, a loud engine roar sounded from the street outside the alley. A delivery truck sped past, throwing up a gust of wind and scattering some debris. Mia's eyes immediately searched for any animals that might be at risk. She saw a kitten that had wandered out of the shadows freeze in panic. Everyone stay calm, Mia called, moving toward the kitten. Guide it back without sudden movements. She extended her hand slowly, and with Mrs. Alvarez's help, they guided the kitten back toward a safer corner. The neighbors watched, understanding that calm leadership could prevent unnecessary harm. This is why education matters, Mia said softly, crouching beside the kitten. People often don't realize that animals respond to fear and sudden gestures just like humans do. The young helper added, and urban wildlife adapts quickly. Every small challenge, a passing vehicle, a loud noise, tests their instincts and our preparedness. That's why planning and observation are critical. As the day progressed, Mia and the neighbors began noting patterns in animal movement. The times when raccoons emerged, where stray cats preferred to hide, and which alley corners were most dangerous during deliveries. They updated their community map, marking potential risks and safe paths. By late afternoon, they had assembled a detailed plan for ongoing urban wildlife care. It included alert systems for neighbors, guidance for children and adults, and emergency contacts for animal control. Each element reflected lessons learned during the night with the cubs and the subsequent observations. Mia realized that sustainable responsibility required continuous vigilance, community engagement, and adaptation to unexpected events. Just as they were finishing, a new sound reached the alley, faint scratching near a construction barrier. Mia's heart leapt. She and the neighbors cautiously approached and discovered a tiny frightened squirrel trapped under some loose boards. Its squeaks echoed sharply, drawing the attention of the children who had been observing from a safe distance. Mia acted immediately. "Don't crowd it. Let me handle this," she instructed, moving slowly and carefully. With Mrs. Alvarez's assistance, she lifted the boards and gently freed the squirrel. It froze for a moment, then darted up a nearby tree, disappearing into the branches. The children gasped, amazed at the rescue. Mia knelt, whispering, "Every life matters. And every small act of care counts." The moment reinforced a key realization. Urban wildlife existed in a constant state of challenge. The cubs had been extraordinary, but the city's rhythm presented everyday obstacles that demanded awareness, empathy, and action. Mia understood now that true moral responsibility was ongoing, not episodic. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows along the alley, Mia looked at her neighbors. "We've done a lot, but the city will always surprise us. Our role isn't just reactive, it's about education, prevention, and vigilance. Every small effort builds a safer community." Mr. Jenkins, who had rarely spoken at length, finally said, "You've transformed this alley, Mia. You've turned fear into knowledge, panic into coordinated action, and curiosity into responsibility. That's a rare gift." Mia smiled, humbled. She understood that courage, empathy, and planning could ripple outward, creating meaningful change far beyond the alley. The cub's story had sparked a movement, but the lessons were now embedded in the community itself, ready to guide future actions. Yet even as they celebrated these achievements, a faint rustling in the shadows reminded everyone that the city was unpredictable. Challenges would always arise, some obvious, some subtle. But Mia and her neighbors were no longer passive observers. They had learned to act thoughtfully, compassionately, and courageously. Even after developing plans and observing patterns, urban wildlife faces unpredictable dangers. How can communities maintain proactive vigilance while ensuring both human and animal safety? What role can you play in fostering coexistence in your city? Evening had settled over the city, the alley bathed in the soft orange glow of the setting sun. Mia stood at the entrance, looking back at the space that had been transformed over the past days. Once a forgotten, shadowed passage, now a hub of learning, awareness, and responsibility. The cubs had been safely taken to a wildlife center, the children had been educated, and the neighbors were actively participating in ongoing urban wildlife protection efforts. Mia felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The events of the past night and subsequent days had revealed not only the fragility of urban wildlife but also the extraordinary power of collective human responsibility. She thought back to the first moments when she had found the cubs alone in the alley, vulnerable, confused, and scared. Now, after a series of carefully coordinated actions, the cubs were safe, the alley was a model of awareness, and the community had grown closer through shared moral responsibility. Mrs. Alvarez approached, a warm smile on her face. "Mia, you've done more than anyone could imagine. This alley isn't just safer, it's a symbol of what communities can achieve when courage, empathy, and planning come together." Mia nodded, her gaze lingering on the remnants of blankets and crates, the subtle signs of past activity. "I've learned that responsibility isn't just about one act of courage. It's about continuous awareness, education, and readiness to adapt to unexpected challenges." Mr. Jenkins, who had been leaning against the wall in his usual quiet manner, spoke with a hint of pride. "And you've shown that moral responsibility isn't limited to humans. It extends to every living being we share this space with." The cubs were the spark, but the lessons extend to every creature navigating our city. The young animal control helper joined them, reviewing notes from their observations over the past days. "The patterns we've documented, the community map, and the education plan, it's all a template. Other neighborhoods can follow this model. Your efforts have created a blueprint for coexistence." Mia felt a deep sense of accomplishment, tempered by the awareness that the work was ongoing. Urban wildlife would continue to face hazards, unexpected obstacles, and human interference. But now, with education, vigilance, and a committed community, the alley was no longer just a dangerous passage. It was a space of hope, understanding, and action. The children, who had been observing quietly, approached Mia. "Can we help more?" one asked, eyes bright with curiosity and determination. Mia knelt to their level. "Yes. You can be observers, learners, and protectors. Every small act, noticing a stray animal, alerting neighbors, helping a creature in danger, makes a difference. Responsibility isn't just about the big heroic moment, it's about everyday awareness." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the alley, Mia noticed the faint sounds of city life, distant traffic, laughter from nearby parks, and the rustling of small animals in hidden corners. She realized that coexistence was not about controlling nature, but about learning to observe, respect, and act responsibly within it. Mrs. Alvarez placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. "You've reminded all of us that empathy and courage ripple outward. One act inspires many, and one lesson becomes a movement." Mia smiled, looking toward the empty spaces where the cubs had once pressed their small bodies against blankets and crates. She imagined them safe, exploring cautiously, learning to trust again. Their survival had sparked an entire community initiative, proving that even the smallest lives could inspire the greatest moral lessons. As night fell, lanterns from nearby buildings cast a soft glow over the alley. Mia and the neighbors conducted a final check, ensuring that signs were visible, maps accessible, and emergency contacts shared. Every corner reflected awareness and preparedness. Before leaving, Mia paused at the entrance, taking one last look at the alley. She whispered softly, "Courage, empathy, responsibility, thank you for teaching us all." In that moment, the alley felt alive, not with fear or danger but with knowledge, preparedness, and moral understanding. Mia realized that urban spaces could be harsh and unpredictable, but human vigilance, compassion, and collaboration could transform danger into safety, ignorance into education, and fear into proactive responsibility. The cub's story had come full circle, from vulnerability to safety, from chaos to structure. The lessons learned extended beyond wildlife, noticing those in need, acting with empathy, planning responsibly, and educating others were moral imperatives that transcended species. Mia turned to the neighbors. "This is just the beginning. We've proven what we can do together. Let's continue teaching, observing, and protecting. Every small act counts." The group shared a quiet moment of reflection, understanding that the alley had changed them as much as they had changed it. They had learned that moral courage and responsibility weren't about grand gestures, but sustained, thoughtful action that respected life, nurtured community, and encouraged coexistence. The city, with its towering buildings, bustling streets, and hidden alleys, seemed less daunting now. Mia understood that vigilance, empathy, and planning could create pockets of safety and understanding, even in the most unpredictable environments. She smiled, confident that the lessons of the cubs would continue to resonate, guiding humans and animals toward a future of coexistence. The cubs are safe and the community is stronger, but the city continues to challenge urban wildlife daily. How can you take lessons from this story to create safer, more compassionate spaces in your own neighborhood? What small, consistent actions could ripple outward to make a lasting difference?